aspects of what we have, of course, for you today, as we pretty much, go around the interesting elements that actually are, at our very table. Mtole, hi, how are you?
Good morning, Vernon. It's one of those days where I've just pitched up in the studio just to come and ransack, check what's going on. Not just reporting live from Chilanga as usual. So once in a while, I come and check and see how the guys are doing. Hopefully, you haven't burnt the studio down. That's my main concern.
Right. We are
But
still standing.
yeah, we are still standing, brother. We are. So today we're going to be talking about a few things. One, we're going to be going through the markets roundup. We're going to be going through Airtel results alongside the telecoms industry, how they did in H1 versus the Airtel results. The second part we're going to be talking about also is we're going to be looking through pharmaceutical data. Because yesterday the president did launch the pharmaceutical forum, which is actually happening right now, and we'll be talking about how that can actually impact Zambia, and what the future of healthcare is regarding that. There are going to be big conversations about should we be manufacturing medicine, and that was the big news that was rounding up yesterday. And then finally, I'm going to talk about entrepreneurship and loan repayment, cash flow management. There's been some videos going around regarding conversations with entrepreneurs on the streets regarding payments, especially booth operators, women, local entrepreneurs. What do they think about things like trying to manage loan repayments? That's a big story for today. But getting into the conversation, getting into the main meat and bones of the conversation, let's get down to the market. We are on day 103 of the Kwacha losing value. If I'm correct, let me just get that correct. That is day 103 of the Kwacha losing value. 103 consecutive trading days of the Kwacha losing value, and we've closed in the interbank wholesale rate of 19.9252. It is 1992, Vernon. Back in 1992, I think that's when Snoop released his first album. That was my youth. I was 5 years old, and so I was already born. I'm not sure if you were. I think you weren't around then. But 1992, that's where the Kwacha is currently right now. Now, my biggest concerns whenever I'm looking at the Kwacha, is the future outlook, because this trajectory doesn't seem to keep stopping, Vernon. So let me give you where this will go if we do not turn this ship around. Currently, the Kwacha is expected to end the month on 20.8, April on 21.72, and May on 22.67, and June on 23.59, and break through to records of 24.55. So that is where we're looking at in terms of our currency. It's actually potentially losing all the way up to 24 if we do not slow this down, because last time I think we managed to turn it around before it hit May. Now remember that this is also gunning for the record longest devaluation of our currency. The first time we did it was last in 2021, when we had a 201-day consecutive devaluation, the longest losing streak on record of the Kwacha, and this one is challenging it. It's already taken up half of that, so we need to be worried about this. This is something that has to turn around, but it's really just dependent on the exchange rate based on the debt negotiations. Because no matter which way this goes, it always breaks down, because the Bank of Zambia is unleashing record amounts of dollars into the economy. The only thing I foresee that could potentially start to help this turnaround is if the mining sector picks up in revenue, because one of the weak spots is the mining sector, and also the high costs of one, medication, and two, fertilizer. Fertilizer and medication are causing huge costs onto our FX rates. Right now, the costs of medication, remember that when you're in the middle of a pandemic, you really have to ramp up on medical buying. There's a lot of activity happening in terms of medicine. And also remember another thing, Vernon. One of the things I think the Minister of Health mentioned yesterday, which could actually be contributing to the FX rate, is that the government has increased its medicine budget from over 1.5 billion to 4.5 billion. That means the government is actually actively on the market looking for dollars to buy medicine. So you actually can see that it's also got to do with government buying of medicine. which is drastically higher than the years before and the budgets before. So remember, the budget allocation of the government to buy medicine has tripled, and therefore there is a lot of pressure going on the forex rates because of that. And I actually picked that up yesterday in the news while the Minister of Health was talking, and that actually explains one of the big things that's actually driving this. So whenever you see a medicine budget, remember that we produce only 10% of the medicine we consume as a country. So because of our production of medicine only being at 10% and the government tripling its budget, 90% of that money that they're purchasing medicine with is going to forex buying. So that's an extra couple of $100 million on the market buying up dollars trying to buy medicine offshore. So already you can see where the pressure on your markets is actually coming from. So yes, you can't tell the Ministry of Health then to stop buying medicine to protect the currency, because you can't have a good currency and dying people. That's not how this works. So I think that's what we have to try and fix as a nation. So that's why I think we're talking about pharmaceutical manufacturing, which we're going to get to later. We did see the rand go down. We did see the kwacha rand also push up to 1094, up 1.18% on strong rand data. So year to date, US dollar is up 10.10%, while the rand is up 2.94%. Remember that I always say you want to keep like 5% of your portfolio in US dollars. Look for, and I always say the options you have are things like US dollar unit trusts that invest in bonds. Okay, either they do short-term savings or they do US dollar unit trusts in US dollar denominated bonds. In other words, US dollar loans in this country to credible institutions that protect you. It helps you hold a little bit of your portfolio. So you always try and see if you can diversify about 5% of your portfolio into dollars, 5% of your portfolio into commodities, either cattle or gold, and then the other 5% into digital currencies if you're comfortable with it. If not, just allocate those extra 2.5% to the other part so that 15% of your portfolio speaks to inflationary pressure. Okay, that's what you want. 15% of your portfolio should speak to inflationary pressure. Now, the remaining part of the day we've also seen is that bonds were up 0.1% in terms of the secondary market, while we also saw them in US dollars down 0.56%. Year to date, bonds are up 5.06% versus against in dollars they're down 4.79%. So it's been a bad performance, obviously, for bonds and FX rates because of the poor sentiment. So as long as these debt negotiations continue going, currency sentiment is always going to be negative. You can try and produce as much as we can in this country, but we have to be strategic. I always say the biggest import hits we have to fight in this country are four Fs, but one of them is a PH with an F sound, okay, people? I'm not illiterate. You have to understand. I know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to help you remember this. But it's 4 Fs, okay? And rewind that part, people. I'm not being illiterate. But it's what I say: fuel, fabric, fertilizer, pharmaceuticals. These four, okay, are the main things that are driving the forex rate negative. So if we actually get to a point where we produce as much as we can in the fuel supply chain, either it's producing ethanol to try and capture some of the fuel supply chain or the finished product cost. Then if we get into fabric, I have said this multiple times, the Industrial Hemp Act, okay? If you work on actualizing industrial hemp, fertilizer and fabric can be dealt with, because hemp can be utilized to produce school uniforms, it can be police uniforms, it can be army uniforms, it can be farm uniforms, it can be mining gear. All sorts of strong textiles that are needed can be produced by hemp, and Zambia is one of the greatest places to grow hemp. So fertilizer and fabric and hemp stalks can be used to produce ethanol, by the way, so that you can also now feed that into the fuel supply chain. Now, pharmaceuticals, obviously, there are some other things. I know people are talking about cannabinoids and those things, but remember that we're looking for drugs that relate to certain things. And I'm going to get you through some stats of what kind of drugs we should be looking for and looking to produce in order to try and treat this country in terms of any illnesses. Remember that we want to be able to deal with illnesses. Okay, we don't want to get caught on the back foot. We want to be able to deal with any illnesses coming up as a country and not be too scared or not be caught in the FX loop on this. Now, the other part, Vernon, that we're also seeing is the commodity sector. And usual commodity news is that oil is back running upwards. Oil is running upwards in terms of it's up at $84. What is the main driver behind oil getting back up? It is the fuel. It is it is the Chinese data, Chinese manufacturing data at record levels, at a decade high. So the Chinese manufacturing sector is roaring. That's what we're seeing yesterday, and we saw a huge bump up even in copper prices back up to 9,132. Chinese manufacturing is doing good. Service sector is doing brilliantly as well, by the way. So the Chinese service sector, the Chinese manufacturing sector show signs that the Chinese economy is going to be doing very strongly. What does that speak to? Good prices on copper, so that should help us with inflows of dollars. But unfortunately, on the other side, high prices of fuel because China is the number one importer of oil. So remember this, $84.41 up 0.8%. Oil is still down 1.75% year to date, but copper is up 9.08%, back up 1.66% yesterday. So that should give us a little bit of a dichotomy stretch. How much money is going to be coming in from taxes? So the good thing, like I told you, if you look at what's it called? If you look at the data that came in from trade, it showed that there was $780 million, $768 million worth of copper exports, up from 630 the previous month. So that should signal higher mineral royalty taxes that should able to come back into the country. So therefore, dollar flows in Q1 are expected to improve somewhere around March. If we consistently see these trade levels doing well and back up above $700 million, that should get some more dollars flowing back into the market. But the problem is we still have negative sentiment, and the bond market is not supporting the copper market in terms of bringing in dollars. Yesterday, we did see gold go up 1.84%, and therefore, if you're looking in Kwacha at your wealth insurance assets, we've seen gold up 11.19% year to date, up 0.67% in Kwacha. Ethereum was up 1.25% year to date, up 50.77%, and Bitcoin is up 0.9% year, up 55.42. I'm going to say this again, Vernon, because people tend to think I'm not paying attention when I say it's because somewhere along the line, someone's going to get hustled in cryptocurrency. Then they're going to come here and say, no, but Munyumba was telling us. No, what Munyumba was telling you was the prices. Munyumba's been telling you, take 85% of your portfolio into stocks, bonds, and real estate. And then the 15% is what we call wealth insurance. And in that 15%, you hold 5% in US dollars, 5% in gold and commodities. In other words, you can hold animals, anything, and 5% in digital currencies. Munyumba did not tell you to hold 90% of your portfolio in cryptocurrency. You've lost your mind if that's what you were saying. What Munyumba is trying to tell you is make sure you diversify well so that when there's a broad market downturn, things like crypto assets, which are doing very well today in Kwacha, while the stock market is still limited in growth, down 1.02%, while the bond market is only up 5%, you can see the crypto part of your portfolio starting to pick up. But because it's wildly volatile, you restrict it to 5%, because when the market now picks back up, the crypto part of your portfolio does worse. So please, people, please listen to the whole thing I'm saying, okay? Don't misuse information that I'm giving you and then make me stop advising you people on air. Okay, that's what I'm trying to tell you. So now, if you're looking at your total portfolio of which sides are doing well, bonds in the secondary market are up 5.06% year to date in terms of the index. The stock market is down 0.12%, while the dollars are up 10.10%. Gold is up 11.19%. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin is up 55.42%, and Ethereum is up 50.77% year to date. So diversify, people. The future is also in mining, and one day we're going to talk about mining cryptocurrency. That is in Futuristic Friday. Now, let's also now go into, Vernon, some of the major news stories. What are my four horsemen telling me? My four horsemen are telling me is that inflation pressure is coming down or getting flat. U.S. crude stockpiled 1.2 million barrels of oil again. So now here's the problem I have. The U.S. has stockpiled 61 million barrels of oil. The inventories of the U.S. have grown by 61 million barrels over the last 10 weeks, but still the price is going up. And that is the effect of the Chinese manufacturing sector getting stronger. Okay, that's how strong Chinese manufacturing recovery is, that it is overpowering oversupply from the U.S. German inflation is also flattening around 8.7%, even though monthly inflation dropped from 1% to 0.8%, showing that supply chains are starting to pull down costs here. Yesterday in the interest market, we saw mortgage rates in the US were up 0.09%, showing more pressure. So that if anyone wants to participate in the Zambian market, they're going to expect more. But a lot of the news, Vernon, yesterday came from the industrial sector. We saw service sector, we saw that manufacturing sector PMIs in China were at record levels, the highest since May 2012. Okay, we're talking about we're looking at almost 11 years or 10 and a half years worth of highs. Indian PMIs declined to 55.4%, slower than expected. There was a decline, but showing weaknesses, but not as bad as expected. Korean industrial production experienced the greatest year-on-year drop since April 2009. So on one hand, you've got China booming, but you've got Japan and Korea limping. So we're trying to figure out what's happening across Asia because Japanese PMIs are also still contractionary. Now, Europe was a mixed bag. In terms of the February PMIs, Russia PMIs picked up 53.6. Even in the middle of a war, Russia still has a positive manufacturing sector. Maybe it's war that's helping it. Turkish PMIs stuck at 51. Italian PMIs went up by 1.6 points up to 52. German PMIs still stayed negative and contractionary, down 0.2 in 46.3. European Union PMIs as a whole were down 0.3 at 48.5, and UK PMIs were negative but improving, 49.3. So you can see there is a mixed bag when it comes, but the mainstream European economies are doing poorly in terms of purchasing managing. Now, in the Americas, we saw PMIs, which are the signal of how the manufacturing sector is doing, show better signs. Brazil's PMIs were negative, but still up 1.5 points. Canada is still having a very positive manufacturing sector, up 1.4 points to 52.4. The USA was in negative territory, but improved also 47.3. But the ISM numbers dropped by 1.9 to 49.1, and Mexican PMIs were up 2.1 points to 51. So you are seeing that South America is doing quite positively as Canada as well, while America is also trundling along. And we also saw that British mortgage approvals went up by 39,000. British mortgage approvals were 39,000 mortgage approvals, but they were down 2.2 points, and mortgage lending declined by 17.5% to 2.4 billion. U.S. mortgage approvals. The U.S. mortgage approvals were down 5.7% were down 5.7% versus the previous session, 13.3. The housing index had also dropped, and the mortgage index also dropped. So in other words, the housing sector of the U.S. and the U.K. are showing weakness. Okay, so the housing sector of the US and the UK are showing weakness. That's not good for copper because remember, the majority of your copper ends up in buildings. So when there's slowdowns in construction in the developing world, you often find slowdowns in demand in copper because wires are not produced as quickly as possible, and all these other things are not produced as quickly as possible. So what are we seeing from the industrial sector? Manufacturing, China, that is the star story. But the rest of the world is giving us mixed reads. While North America is kind of mixed, South America is strong, Europe is also developed, Europe is strong. Developing Europe is weak, while the housing sector is weak. So it's patchworks all over the place. So the expectations of growth are slowing down. German unemployment stayed where it was. Chinese service sector PMIs were good. Retail sales in Switzerland declined by 2.2%, while Japanese capex spending was up 7.7%, giving signals of potential growth in the Japanese manufacturing sector. UK net lending had risen by 10.8%, and credit to UK citizens was up 1.03%, while South African vehicle sales dropped 4.6%, dropped from 4.6% to 2.6% growth levels. So in other words, global growth still weak, but there are some signs of strength. Industrial, mixed read, inflation coming down but strong. We are in an indecisive period of the global economy, Vernon. That is where a lot of the data is taking us today. So that is what our outlook is for today. We still have a mixed economy globally, but we're still battling our FX rate. Biggest problem we're battling right now is the FX rate of Zambia. And coming into this, Vernon, now we're going to get into data on the data from the financial data from Airtel, which they actually released from yesterday. You know, I get something like 4 sentences running in my mind at the same time. So you have to forgive me. people. Sometimes they're about 4 sentences, and I think I end up skipping ahead of the one that I'm trying to address now. So my bad, people, my bad. But Airtel Networks released its results yesterday. And I will be going into depth in them. But what did we see? 33% growth in profits versus 304% year-on-year growth in profits in the previous year. So in other words, we've seen a slowdown. The key drivers of this growth in profits is 24% growth in revenue versus 38% the year before. So we did see slowdowns. However, in H1 data, we only saw revenues actually grow 18%. I just want to correct this. It was 9.1% that we had written there, but it was actually 18%. So we're seeing that versus the year before, where revenues had grown by 24.8%. So it seems as though we are seeing a slowdown in the telecom sector altogether. Customer base growth on Airtel was up 14% versus last year's 19%, but H1 growth data had shown that customers are contracting to either flat to contracting. So in other words, we've reached the ceiling. So Airtel is still managing to grow their profits, grow their revenue, and grow their customers in a stuck industry where there is a new player that's coming to try and eat their lunch. So in other words, this is actually corporate resilience that we're actually seeing from them as a company and as a stock. That's actually quite good. Remember that Airtel is one of your billion kwacha stocks. So remember, I hold the billion kwacha index, 8 stocks in the country that have a valuation of a billion kwacha or more, the billion kwacha boys club, as I like to call them, BBC. Now that is what I generally also advise if you want your mega cap exposure to the stock market. Those are usually quite liquid. They grow quite well. Some of them, yes, do not grow too well. We are hoping to see companies like ZCC and probably have better. But that is the first of the major results. We should be seeing more and more results coming in. But it is interesting, Vernon, to start seeing such stress on the telecom sector. I think Zambia is one of those countries, and give me your thoughts on this. Zambia seems to be one of these countries where the telecom sector grew so fast, it's now got no more room to grow. And the only part of telecoms that seems to be growing is mobile money, which is not included, by the way, in that stock. What do you think?
As Zara, of course, was trying to introduce the tax with mobile money, there is where they're getting their money. There are no cuts, so they're likely to get the whole chunk of it. And with these, purchases like data and airtime, at least you have, a pinch. But with the mobile money and just how they've basically expanded, and recently looking at how much they've just as transactions that they've had in at least a space of a year, they're definitely having some good revenue on that end.
I mean, think about it. Mobile money is now, there are 1 billion mobile money, 1.5 billion. Mobile money is the first ever transaction system that is taking through 1 billion transactions. And it's right now at 1.5 billion individual transactions in Zambia. And then simultaneously, remember that you're seeing out of the total transactions that happened last year. So I think pay attention to the total number of transactions that happened last year. Not the total number, the total value of transactions that occurred last year. Mobile money was still the king of the ring. In fact, it had more than 50%. It was the first time we have seen a payment system since checks. Since back in those old school days when people decided to use checks, though I keep saying to you, Vernon, I don't know who these resistant to change people are who are still holding on to it. Yeah, no, as in you are seriously resistant to change. Okay, there's an old picture I remember where they had built a walkway, where they built a path. It's a picture of a path, and then somebody is still walking on the grass, and they put an arrow there and said, "This is the definition of resistance to change." That even if someone builds a better path for you, you're still resistant to change to the point where you're not interested. But what I was trying to say is that mobile money, in where it stands in terms of the total value of transactions, is still sitting at about 50.1% of total transactions in Zambia. And the data is actually showing that 295 billion, Vernon, billion, okay? 295 billion kwacha of transactions are done through mobile money. So evidently somebody wants a piece of that. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that it seems as though the MNOs are probably making a lot more money through these transactions. And even the banking sector, ironically, Vernon, is benefiting from this. the banking sector actually pointed out that the transactions that they were picking up, that some of their growth in transactions is what they call push-pull transactions. So when you take money from your mobile network provider or from your mobile money account and you push it into your bank account or you push it back out, those little fees that are coming out. So some of these banks are charging 5 kwacha, 10 kwacha, 15 kwacha for moving money between your mobile money accounts. What do you think they're making? So you see, even banks are starting to benefit. And this also explains when the CEO of Standard Chartered was being interviewed on ZNBC, and he was asked straight up, do you see mobile money as a threat? And he said, why? They're my customers. So when you think about it, this is what he meant. Okay, he meant those push and pull transactions are actually some of the business that are going to keep him in the transaction system. So what I'm suspecting we're going to be seeing from the finance sector going forward, Vernon, is that mobile money will be the retail banking, wholesale banking, which will now be cheaper for these bigger banks. They'll just become the cash solution providers for the mobile money industry, unless you start seeing mobile money operators directly interfacing with the central bank. That's a different story if we start to see that. But let me actually just share this data so that you can see it. I know I shared it once, but let me just share this data again so that you can all see what I mean by the dominance of mobile money in Zambian financial services in terms of transactions. So that's why I'm saying that when I'm looking at companies like Airtel, it's unfortunate that the stock does not capture mobile money inside. Yeah. You know what I mean is that there's Airtel Networks and there's Airtel Money. Those are actually two separate companies. So whenever you're looking at investing, unfortunately, you don't get a piece of that action. But if you look very carefully here, you see the total amount of retail payments here being 590.5 billion. If you're looking here, 295 is mobile money, over 50%, up 74% from the previous year. And obviously the fastest growing other one was point of sale. Point of sale transactions were up 84% to 111. So I'm suspecting that by the end of this year, the top two payment systems in this country that will make up about 70 to 80% of payment activities are going to be point of sale, people swiping, and mobile money transactions. That is what we're going to be seeing in Zambia. But already the majority, if you count electronic funds transfer, point of sale, and mobile money, you're looking already, Vernon, already as it stands, you're looking at 90% of payments or 89% of payments in Zambia are paperless. 89% of payments in Zambia are effectively paperless because the majority of mobile money transactions are also cash send. It's cash send and payments. It's not people withdrawing anymore. People have gotten used to this idea of paying for things. The only place which is resistant to using mobile money, which one day we will fight them, is the bus sector. One day. But, obviously the issue of the bus sector is people then say, but conductors will be out of work. I'm like, is that a must, people? But anyway, I understand. I'm just saying based on customer needs. But anyway, this is some of the data that we are looking at in terms of the telecom sector. Now, other piece of news, Vernon, yesterday was that the president opened the forum for pharmaceutical manufacturing. So there was EU pharmaceutical manufacturers and Zambian pharmaceutical manufacturers who sat down together and were trying to figure out how to get pharmaceuticals production in Zambia. Now, if you recall yesterday, Vernon, I think one of the things we spoke about was that the biggest threat when it comes to our FX rate, in fact, earlier today, I've said is that we are importing. One of the things we all have to remember as Zambians is we import 90% of what we consume pharmaceutically. So all those drugs that you're taking, people, to heal your illnesses, 90% of them are imported. Your government has increased its medicine buying budget threefold, okay? So the pressure that's putting, because these things are produced in other countries. So if they could be produced here, it reduces the forex pressure on the country and creates jobs. And that is what the president was trying to say. In as much as we want to try and make sure we have as much medical supply, we would also like to make sure that we're creating jobs at the same time, and we're also buying locally. And it also creates local supply chains. So what are the difficulties? So let's take a look at what we should be looking at, Vernon. What should we be looking at? What kind of drugs should we be treating? Okay, firstly, HIV drugs is the number one issue in Zambia. But whether the Western world is going to allow you to start manufacturing ARVs in your country, that's a different story. Those people don't even want you to see what is in that stuff, let alone they're difficult on ARVs. Because that's their bread and butter. ARV manufacturing companies are rich. Okay. Exactly, and you're a lifetime customer for them once you start getting treatment. So I mean, obviously they're trying to look at how to manufacture closer. So you do get some of the conversations happening there. Now, I want to first talk about something that most people don't consider when you talk about drug manufacturing, is that every drug, sequencing of a drug, the chemical sequencing is patented. Okay, somebody owns the copyrights to that, so you have to license it from them in order to be able to manufacture. So the first thing you have to sort out is licensing manufacturing. Okay, because we're not going to be producing drugs from scratch. That's just, I'm sorry, we tried it with the Sondashi formula, and we saw the resistance our own people gave. Though the who's been trying to treat, but herbals have not been treated that well yet. But pharmaceuticals, you see, there's a battle between herbal medicine and pharmaceutical medicine, but we'll get back to that. As we talk about the drug manufacturing, the things that we need, already we have to talk about licensing. 60% of new drugs in this world are produced in America. Okay, it used to only be 25%. Now the problem is, because a lot of these countries became socialist, and therefore what happened is they drove out a lot of the competition of their drug sector. What happens now is drug creation is done in America, drug production is done in China, Germany, and some other countries. Okay, so there's a difference. Drugs are created in America, researched and everything. The patents and the licenses are held in America, but the drug license production is done in other countries. So in other words, getting the license to produce drugs is what we're first going to start with. This is going to take a long time, people. It's not going to be that they're going to be drug men. It's not like opening a Kantemba, people. Opening a drug plant is serious. You have to go through World Health Organization screening. You have to go through a lot of things. So you have to be very careful about assuming this. So I wanted to look at what drugs should we be prioritizing. So let's take a look at what drugs are in demand the most. Okay, I think the first thing we should look at is what drugs are the highest in demand in Zambia, or the fastest growing. So this is a study done by this is data that was released by the University of Washington's Health Metrics and Evaluation, Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. And this slide was taken showing that non-communicable diseases are the fastest growing. Okay, and it shows you which drugs we should be focusing on. So I'm going to get this list for you of the fastest growing drugs, and I've pointed an arrow nicely at the ones we should be looking at. Stroke medication, okay? Because stroke has grown 58% in prevalence of cause of death in the last, it's grown 58%, and it's gone from the 6th highest cause of death to the 3rd highest cause of death in Zambia. So stroke medication is extremely important for us to start looking at producing. So these are the things that are going to put costs on. So obviously HIV drugs is number one still. So we have to try and see whether it's even possible. But stroke medication is what we're looking at because it's the fastest growing. Now ARVs are coming down because the prevalence of new infections is also slowing down in Zambia because people have understood that, you know, you have to use protection. So that's the first thing, stroke medication. The second one we're looking at, second fastest growing is hypertension drugs. They've grown in prevalence by 60.6%, going from the 15th highest cause of death to the 10th highest cause of death, up 5 levels between 2009 and 2019. So already you're seeing that is the kind of medication that we must be producing as a country. Cirrhosis medication. Why cirrhosis medication? Because Zambians are guzzlers, Vernon. Zambians are Let me show you a list. I'm going to talk to you about a list very quickly in Zambia. That is, and I'm going to just open up my, and forgive me, people. I know I always show you like bullet points and stuff, but today I'm going to have to show you from Excel. Unfortunately, because I compiled this yesterday utilizing data. This is a chart, Vernon, of the, fastest growing this is the chart, of the fastest growing alcohol per capita consumption. Okay, look at this. Look at where Zambia. These are 19 countries in SADC, and these are 19 countries in SADC and in East Africa. I compiled 19 countries from SADC and East Africa, and here's what I found. the fastest growing country in terms of alcohol, liters of pure alcohol consumed per capita of people above the age of 15 is Seychelles. They've gone from 7.6 liters to 20.5. My goodness, there's something wrong with these guys. Like, seriously, something bad is happening in Seychelles for them to be guzzling like that. Congo is the next highest one, 166%. They've gone from 3.5 liters to 9.3. This is not DRC. Angola is the next one, 2.8 liters to 6.9. DRC, 0.9 to 2. Zimbabwe, 2.5 all the way up to 4.7. Namibia. Zambia is number 7. We're the 7th highest. The average Zambian is consuming 60% more alcohol than they were consuming 10 years, than they were consuming 20 years ago. What's wrong with you people? What's going on? The average Zambian man has gone from 6 liters. Now, Vernon, when I'm talking about pure alcohol, I'm not talking about liters of beer. I'm talking about the amount of ethanol in that beer, in liters. Okay, so whenever you drink a 300 milliliter of beer and it's 5% alcohol, you know what they're telling you? There's about 15 milliliters of ethanol in there. Okay, so you guys are drinking 6 liters of these per year, 6 liters of that per year, and you've gone from 6 to 10. Okay, so these are some huge changes. So last time I talked to you, so already Zambian women are consuming 1.6 to 2.6 liters. Malawi is obviously after that. The world is only increasing by 13%. Sub-Saharan Africa is decreasing, by the way. The rest of Africa is decreasing in consumption. And you guys, you can see Sub-Saharan Africa is down. Zambia is up from 4 liters on average to 6.5 liters on average of alcohol consumption, of which only the men are the ones doing this. 77% of alcohol consumption is Zambian men, by the way. So that should teach you where this is coming from. So this is why cirrhosis treatment is up. And also at the same time, we're seeing the other drugs that need to be produced in Zambia. So cirrhosis treatments need to be produced. Whatever medication or pharmaceuticals we need for cirrhosis have to be picked up. Other things that we also need to start looking at in terms of the pharmaceutical industry and what the pharmaceutical industry needs to be producing. So let me just get back to my drug chart here. Is not malaria, sorry, cirrhosis medication, heart disease as well. Heart disease kills 1 in 3 people. In the 1 in 3 of the deaths in the world is heart disease related. It's cardiovascular disease. So that's also grown by 19%, and it's gone from the 8th highest killer to the 7th highest killer. So you can see that we need to make sure that we're going for these things that are growing the fastest and start manufacturing those. Because evidently our guys are doing a lot. We're doing the most. So as you're drinking a lot, you're upsetting your heart. Remember that even sugar consumption, the average Zambian has gone from consuming 10 kgs of sugar a year to 18 kgs of sugar a year in the last decade. Okay, so we're consuming more alcohol and we're consuming more sugar. Okay, what do you think this is doing to our bodies as people? So that's why these non-communicable treatments need to be improved. These are the things we should be manufacturing. Stroke, heart disease, hypertension, cirrhosis. These are the things that we should be targeting in terms of drug production. And why should we be targeting that? Well, because, Vernon, the cost of those things are also going to start going up. So we need to mitigate that. I'm going to show you something very quickly as to why it was very important for the president to host that thing on drug production. Here is what's going to show you the growth in dollars of the cost of production. So of the cost of medication. These are 2 charts that are showing you what is it projected in 2050 and what we're seeing now. The average cost of treating a person is going to cost, the average cost of medication or the cost of treatment is going to be $66 per person. Now we're getting to $83 per person per year. Now I want you to take a look at that little blue part here. This part that's light blue, that's government health spending, is expected to go up from $23 to $36 per person. Now remember, the Zambian population is expected to triple, okay? Grow to actually almost 2.5 times what it is. So they're going to be serving a higher population while spending more on each person. The medical budget of this country is expected to go from $1 billion kwacha to $1 billion to $4 billion by the year 2050. So the government is going to be under stress trying to figure out how to deal with medical prices. So if they don't start producing in 2050, we're going to be looking at a massive debt bubble, worse than this infrastructure one that we've seen. And the problem with healthcare debt bubbles is they're truly destructive to a nation. So already you can see this. And also you're going to be seeing things like as a person's out-of-pocket expenses. So the amount you have to spend at the hospital is expected to go up from $7 per person to $10 per person. So you people who are paying for drugs, you're going to have to start paying more by the year 2050. And if you're looking at when at the age of 4, in terms of your health insurance. Now, here's what why I'm pointing this out. When you are in retirement, Vernon, right now you're 23, you're healthy, you're a young man, okay? You're a young man. You're a vibrant man. Okay? I'm guessing you're in your 20s. You're a vibrant man. Okay? Maybe that beard is maybe you gave me your football age. Maybe I'm also guessing here. Maybe you gave me your football age. But somewhere in the future, Vernon, you're gonna retire and you're gonna need healthcare spending. You young people now, and I say this because I'm no longer officially youth. I'm 6 months too old to be youth. But you young people now, you are going to look at your future and you're going to realize these are going to be your drug prices when you're Madala and you're going to need those. So you must be invested in local manufacturing of as many of these drugs as possible, especially young men. Okay? Because when you're older, these are going to be the things you're going to be battling with. BP, sugar, heart disease, that is what you're going to be battling with because of the lifestyle decisions that gents are making now. You're consuming 77% of the alcohol, and you think you're not going to be caught up with this stuff later on in life. So this is why manufacturing of medicines is going to need to be done locally, not just pain medication, but we're going to need to be producing 90% of the medicines in this country. That is why pharmaceutical is very important. And if the government is going to be supplying pharmaceuticals and pain and medication, we're going to need to see a lot more people doing well. Yes, we're also seeing, and somebody else has pointed out here, Rodwell, thank you very much for bringing this up. We're also seeing that women have increased in consumption. According to your chart, there's a 63% versus 61%. Our women have overtaken brothers in alcohol consumption. Not yet. They're still consuming a fraction, Rodwell. But yes, in terms of the growth, in terms of the speed at which women are growing their alcohol consumption, yes, they are overtaking us. Now, guys, that doesn't mean that it's a challenge, okay? Don't accept the challenge. This is not challenge accepted. But yes, we are seeing quite a bit of growth in terms of alcohol consumption. The headline here is Zambians are consuming 70% more sugar than they used to consume 10 years ago. And the average Zambian is consuming 63% more alcohol than they used to consume 20 years ago. These behavioral changes are actually going to transition. And this is why, Vernon, the key number one threat to people's health in Zambia is actually obesity. It's rising obesity levels. Okay, I know when you look around, you're like, but everyone is skinny. Actually, rising obesity levels are the fastest health risk in this country. Then alcohol consumption is number 2. So, guys, dopes and sugar, these are the issues right now. These are the battles right now. So we have to couple domestic drug manufacturing with healthy living. Okay, that's what we need to do. One of the reasons also, by the way, they want to bring domestic drug manufacturing is that Zambia is no longer looked as landlocked, we're looked as land linked. So if we can produce in Zambia, we can supply to the neighboring countries. So whether DRC, Malawi, those countries. And finally, Vernon, the conversation should also start heading towards the green medication. Now, it's not a joke for you people to start having fun with. I'm saying that a hectare of cannabis, medicinal cannabis grown, yields a crop worth $1 million. A hectare of maize grown is $600. I'm just saying. Maybe that's a conversation for another day. Tomorrow, Vernon, we're going to be talking about the future of work's top 10 jobs. We're going to be talking about student loans and the skills of the future. That is what I want people to focus on today. But today I want to talk about health and manufacturing locally. Any final comments before you jump off?
Yeah, on the issue of some drugs that we are now producing in the country, where are we? Last time I remember we had the Minister of Health talking about having to purchase and secure drugs for the country just to really work around the issue of drug shortages in the country. That is the follow-up, having to start producing drugs ourselves. But then, how long is it going to take for us to set up a plant? And is it really going to work? Because right now we're looking at a very interesting scenario of government institutions, medical institutions having no drugs in clinics and hospitals. And looking at it's a brilliant idea to know that we have our own plant if that's what they're planning. But how long is it going to take, and what's going to hold us up until that time, possibly when we have our own plant?
export medicinal cannabis. I'm saying this, Vernon, because if you export a few tons of ganja out there, and not for people to play around with, but if you export it, you have to understand that that will offset your imports. You know, your medicinal cannabis exports, if you're very good about this, and if you first thing we need to do, and I'm just going to quickly take this, is separate in the Controlled Substances Act hemp and cannabis. Because even Donald Trump did this. In 2018 in the Farm Bill Act, he actually separated it and stopped issuing it as a controlled substance so people can now start growing it. So if we can do that, we can start using hemp manufacturing to offset the FX costs of fertilizer, because we can be domestically producing fertilizer, fabric, and cannabis exports. Those dollars saved and those dollars earned can finance us being able to get more drugs.
Something of course I'm actually looking forward to have the Ministry of Health really, walk us through that procedure of how they're going to execute this. But thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vernon. See you later, my brother. See you tomorrow.